Minasan, Mac Mechanic here, and today we'll be doing another tier list video. So soon, you say? Well, I have been very busy with stuff for the past few weeks, and by the time I realized VS03 and VS04 has come out, and I already did an unboxing video just some time ago, so you guys should check that out. I will leave the links in the card as usual, and it makes me thinking the Clan Set Collection 03 and 04 is quite different compared to the previous one, in the sense that it introduced more than one boss unit for different archetypes, and I think it would be unfair to judge the supports of the clan based on the overall power level by itself, as I think different unit has different way to play around it. And I think, you know what, let's do a tier list for grade 3.
Nice.
Here's a problem though, there is no such tier list as that. So I have no choice but to make one of them. And then I run into another problem. I need a Twitter account to make that. So technically I have a Twitter account now. Yay! Okay, anyway, yes, this is an account that I have been kind of used for sometimes just to see some of the stuff, so I'm not really posting anything by myself. So I thought, what? Okay, let's just use this as a way for me to communicate with you guys. So I'll be posting mainly my uploads, and maybe if you guys interested in me sharing thoughts on something, I will leave it there, I guess. But you know, I will not be touching it as much. So yeah, my Twitter will be in the description from now on. So if you guys enjoy stalking me, then consider follow it. And yes, this tier list will be in the description as well, so you guys can do it, as this is kind of unique to myself, because I'll be judging all the grade 3 unit that was released in this clan booster. Yes, all 33 of them. Damn! So without further ado, before we get into anything, of course, this is based purely on my opinion and play testing for and against certain decks. I haven't had a chance to play all of the deck, but I have a chance to discuss with some of the player who still play V, and I think I get a good grasp of many of the units. Some I wasn't able to get a clear grasp because of the, you know, not all players are able to play with clan. So yeah, if any of the card you feel that is a little bit judged wrongly, do leave in the comments below. Also, I do make Vanguard content semi regularly, you know, as much as I can. So consider like, share and subscribe to this channel, and you know, hit that bell for more notification, as all these engagements will really help my channel. I'm trying to hit at least 1k by end of this year, so if you guys willing to help out, I would be really appreciate. But for those who already subscribed, thank you so much. And without further ado, let's get into it. And then we start off with quite an interesting unit, and that is Cobalt Wave Dragon. I made this list some time ago when the card haven't been reviewed yet, so for Maelstrom viewers and the Cobalt Wave Dragon, I'm using the old arts. But overall, I think Cobalt Wave Dragon is actually quite a solid unit. It's a very good unit to start off, as it has quite a potential to be pretty fun for a budget deck. You can't really compare him to Maelstrom Reverse,
Of course!
which I will get to later, but I think in general he is a pretty fun unit to play, as he gain more power as more regard you attack, and once he attacks, you gain more effect based on the power level that he's at.
Interesting.
It does kind of play into a Aqua Force playstyle where you do a lot of tiny poke for a big rush, and I think this is a very perfect example of that. And as you all know by now, there's a lot of generic Aqua Force restander in the clan itself, so I think this is definitely gonna make use of them a lot. But I do think that compared to the other Aqua Force deck that is currently available right now, like Tawas, Maelstrom for example as well, and of course Valios, I think this does fall short a bit. Not as bad as Valios, since Valios does remove all the Excel markers when he activates his effect, but I think this in general is a pretty fun unit to play. However, the thing that is not just good but down like very strong though is Maelstrom Reverse. So for those who don't know, Maelstrom Reverse utilize a lock mechanic among themselves, where every time a Regard attack, you lock another standing Regard, and if you do so, you gain Maelstrom Reverse gain additional 10k, and opponent must retire one Regard if possible. That sounds good and all because, you know, it's a very strong control.
But wait! There's more!
However, its second effect that is really tip the balance to the next level. So when he attacks, opponent must discard or retire more regards from based on the card that your player lock. So that means if you lock at least 3 Rega, that means total of 4 cards to this card for the opponent.
Synergy.
And this card gain a crit as well. So this not only pressurize the opponent with the high power and the crit, it's also essentially dwindle the resource of the opponent. In fact, it's dwindle. I think this is the strongest dwindle since Jamil Funko. So I think overall, this definitely makes Maelstrom really strong, and it has already been a strong archetype to begin with. So I think overall, great unit. Next up is Salom, and Salom, I think this is gonna be quite a controversial unit for a lot of people, as I do think it is a really strong unit. Jevon Knights, back when the Astray just released, became a really strong soul charge engine for Royal Paladin for many of the decks like Soul Saver Dragon, for example. And I think that now that they have its own identity, they have enough cards to play itself, it's pretty good.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Shalom with ability to attack 2 times with crits, both with crits in fact, is actually quite consistent, and the cost is not that bad. So Blast 4 is actually quite cheap for a deck like Jevonite, and to top that, you do manage to be able to keep cards in your hand, I believe. Let me check.
One eternity later.
So essentially, depend on number of cards you call this turn, you can withstand this card. So it does kind of make up with the cost a bit, but I think Jevonite already call a lot, so that's kind of...
No, he's got a point.
So overall, Shalom I think is a great card. Together with the new support, I think Jevonite is finally a playable deck that has wanted itself to be since the limit break era, and I'm glad they do so. In fact, I think I might start playing Royal Paladin again just because Jevonite finally has been playable and they look pretty spicy. Okay, next up is Yo-Yo. And it's Witch card, and this is the card deck that I have already practiced and tested for quite a bit, and I'm happy to say that it's in this tier. Like, Witches has always lacked some kind of offense and a way to gain more protect marker more consistently aside from Coco effect, and Yo-Yo is exactly that unit. In fact, I think OTT is by far the clan. If you want to start OTT deck from just weak-clan selection, just one of them alone, I think OTT is the best because every single reprint in this booster, you get a witch. All of them are witches, and many of them are quite a core card, with the exception of Coco. I think overall, Yo-Yo is a really fun deck. Like, I have played Tetris many times, and unless I'm up against a deck that do this card or do multiple attack, this deck can more or less tank most of them. Of course, some of the pieces need to be in their favor as well, but I think overall it's still a very solid deck. Still not good enough to beat the top tier deck though. Okay, next up, Himego Reverse, and I'm gonna say this is in this side of life. Most of the reverse unit kind of split into 2 categories. You sacrifice a lot for a very powerful effect, and you do lock, but it locked for a different reason, and Himeko is one of them. And I think Himeko is a very good defensive unit as it allows you to get a guaranteed trigger activation out of the go, and that's actually pretty strong against a lot of the Excel deck, and I think that alone it should be put in the high up tier on the list. The only problem I decide not to put it at the top is because of the fact that this card is not very strong to begin with. Himeko is quite a situational combo right line to begin with, but it's still a strong deck regardless. It's just that, you know, compared to the high tier deck that I'm aware of, it is pretty tame.
Ha! Gay!
However, what is not tame in my opinion is Yata Garasu.
What the fuck?
Okay, hear me out on this one. Yata Garasu is actually a pretty good unit in my opinion for mainly 2 reasons. First one is that it's a unit that enable 5 force attack in 1 turn, and not only that, it does give you some resource as well. With her first ability, that you do need to soul blood a specific grade, but I think that is not a problem with Genesis. It's in fact like a lot of deck is just not a lot of card can make this card trigger all the 3 effects very consistently, and I think that is really good by itself. What makes this card even stronger is the fact that it has a Sullivan effect.
Hey, that's pretty good.
So for those who don't know what Blade Sullivan is, he has ability that if your Vanguard is great, have 13 or more soul, you can give the additional 10k value to your shield with any of the card that you got. However, you do need to Soul Blast to do so. And this is exactly card just that. However, this card may play a little bit differently. It gives you a 10k shield regardless of the situation. All you need to do is just Soul Blast 3. So I think this is pretty easy to activate. And I think overall, it gives the Genesis a much needed defense that it kind of lacked in the past. And I think overall, it's a pretty solid deck. Okay, next up is Dauntless Dominate Reverse Dragon. This, in my opinion, is also a very solid tier. In fact, it's gonna be high up here. So this is one of those units like Himiko where the lock card doesn't really affect overall performance of the deck. And also this card is strong together with Dauntless in the fact that it's allow you to do 2 chunky Vanguard attacks with multiple drive check if you have cost to pay for and if you have enough regard to kind of lock for its effect.
Damn, boy, he's sick!
So overall, I think this is a very solid deck to play with Dauntless Drive, and I think Dauntless Drive has already been considered quite a strong boss unit to be played and to be played with. This just shifted its level to the next level. It's kind of mixed well. Let's just put it this way. It's mixed well with its original counterpart. Okay, next up, Blazing Fair is gonna be in the same tier as Cobalt Wave, and the reason is that Blazing Fair as a Vanguard is really strong because it can delete deck that generate a lot of markers like Lua, Witches, and Tava. So yeah, this is definitely a really good unit, and it can work as a Vanguard as well. So if your deck do need some retire engine and you do have some special to play, I think this is a card that you can rely on. And even if you don't use it as a main Vanguard, you can still rely on it as a side deck, and it will definitely perform well. So I think overall, as a Vanguard, you do need some support to make this deck work a little bit more consistently. So Blast 5 to burn all the markers still is a little bit expensive for Kagero, but this is still pretty damn good. Next is Lawkeeper, and this is hard to decide because I do like its effect, but nah, it's not good. And mainly it's because of the second effect. The first effect can be very fun to play as it actually restricts opponent field before you even start the battle phase. This means that you can kind of control the opponent to that extent, but the problem is that the opponent control their regard. So that means that they can remove the unit that is not as necessary, but they still gain the same amount of pressure to you as well. To make things worse, this has ability of giving all unit 5k, but it does also have ability to give all opponent unit 5k if they have nothing in the back row. So if you want to use this, you need to be very big brain to actually pull the control level off. But I think overall, it's
Disappointed!
okay. Next up is Haki Walk Reverse, and I've seen around a lot of people talking bad about this card, and I can kind of see why. Murakumo has a lot of strong OTK potential, and at the end of the day, I do feel that this is a made card. The reason is because, for one, it's only related to one card, which is original Haki Walk, which is a pretty good unit to begin with together with this card. The problem is that you can do a lot more better with other archetype in the Murakumo and gain roughly the same amount of advantage at this card. However, I do want to admit that this deck still has the highest offensive potential out of all the Excel deck, out of all the Murakumo deck that is currently available, as it can hit a really high number. That the defensive trigger won't matter as much. Next up is Stealth Feint, and this is gonna be on the mid side as well. I think Murakumo in general in this whole booster get quite a mass support because many of them are the first of their archetype. Like for example, Weasel Black is essentially a boss unit, the first boss unit of the Special Agent deck, which is quite a fun deck in my opinion. I don't know much about the composition of this deck, so I need to kind of study more and like ask around people who actually play the deck to understand it more. But I think it's a pretty solid deck. It's not strong right now because of how it can spam haul very quickly. It doesn't have enough power to push for the opponent as much. I mean, like there's no regard. All the special agent on the field does get some power, but it's just not high enough to go over the defensive trigger. but it's still a very consistent deck. Like if your opponent doesn't get any defensive triggers, this will definitely end your opponent, like guaranteed to end your opponent. On the other hand, Tamarmo is considered to be stealthy, but not at the same time. I think this is a good unit to be supported the deck. It's just that there are way too little stealthy to be supported compared to deck like Witches, and that is why all Burakamo I decided it's gonna be in the meh tier. Okay, Dangari. This is the tough one. This is a tough one to be honest, and this is meh in my opinion. A lot of people will say nope, just nope, but hear me out on this one. A lot of Narukami cards do buy card from your hand, and I think that alone allows Dangari to be played consistently.
No, he's got a point.
Even if you have one of them on the field at a time. And to make things more interesting, this card is able to reshuffle your deck. Is able to shuffle back triggers into your deck, which is something rare in V. So I do think I need to admit its usefulness for that. And of course, it's still hard to play because you only can have one of them on the field, because one of them will just trash everything into from the bind zone into the drop zone in one shot. But I think unlike the original Dangaris, the older version of the Dangaris, the Wii version just have a lot of cards that do bind from their hand a lot more often. So this can be played to a more consistent value in my opinion, and that's why I leave it in the mid tier. Okay, next up is Zero, and this is hard to judge. Like, Zero has an impressive ability, and thanks to Black, I think he can be used as a finisher. The problem is behind the fact that it's Zero powered, and the support around it doesn't really support it that much after I have looked through it. And overall, I think this gonna trigger some people, but I think it's here.
There's a little bit of
You're failing on the highest level.
Like, it's a good support. Like, you can't deny the fact that you can decrease opponent power to 0 is actually pretty busted, and its ability to kind of stop some of the more annoying Rega attacks is pretty strong as well, like for example Hanmeo. But I do think that it does need some more support to be able to make this run a little bit more smoothly. Okay, next up is this is okay, Dudley Reward. This is bad. Okay, this is coming from a player who played Dudley Emperor Reverse that played with me recently. So what he told me is that Dudley Emperor Reverse problem is the fact that you are removing Precious Rega Circle to be able to rush with this card, and just like most of the reverse deck, you do need the original version to actually make it go together. But Dudley Reverse just doesn't work as much compared to archetypes like Rising Nova and other archetype that is currently available in the deck. And even within Dudley archetype in itself, Dudley Reverse is not really needed based on this player opinion, because of the fact that you are reducing your resource, and what you get at the end of the day is just additional drive check, which may or may not help you. So overall, I kind of understand his plea, and that's why I decided to put him, actually he's still better than Lawkeeper, and that's why I decided to put him in the note here, just to reflect the opinion of this friend of mine has mentioned. Next up is Laquia Reverse, and I think this is pretty solid. I'm not sure it's going to be meta tier solid or not, because you still lock quite a number of cards. So this put the deck into the similar situation as Hakiwok Reverse, where you have a lot of breakers with a high power to hit the opponent for even the defense cheat trigger cannot really protect themselves.
Hey, that's pretty good.
The reason why it is higher than Hakiwok though is that this can be done a lot more consistently, as all you need is a silver tone archetype, while Hakiwok is 2-unit archetype, and that alone is why I put Reverse in the high tier. I don't have much to say about it, just a good deck. I hope I can play it though. This is one of the deck on my wishlist for the longest time. Okay, next is Referate Rock. Essentially cross right to the reference from the previous booster, and I'm gonna put it this way. It needs a little bit of help in my opinion. As it currently stands, it can do a lot of disgusting attack column while still have a lot of power behind it. But Rock kind of forced normal Referate to play a little bit differently, even if at the cost of getting more drive checks. And Modern shade is good and all, but the problem with rock is that you reduce the marker by half
Disappointed!
at the end of the turn, so it can be a little bit bad for players. Like, I know VS03 generate force marker quite a bit, but the fact that you are reducing your own power is just doesn't make sense for me. It needs something to maybe generate more force marker consistently, like something that work with just Hurley, just to generate more markers, so that like the demerits that she does, that half the whole marker that you have, is a little bit less painful. Okay, Master Beetle. I'm gonna need to check this card effect real quick. Okay, I see. This card is on the okay level for me. I'll put it on the higher tier. So here's the thing. Ability to paralyze the opponent break card has always been considered to be a good thing, even if your opponent can just call over just to maintain their offense. But I think this card is a solid unit overall for the reason that it does work as a rear guard.
Which is nice and all.
And the fact that it does work as a rear guard can mean a lot in a lot of decks, as you can kind of frozen a lot of attack or the certain important rear guard before they actually use it for anything at all. And also the fact that this thing can drive check a lot is actually pretty good for Omega Colony, which is a clan that's kind of mistakenly put into the protect deck.
Why you booing me? I'm right.
And I think this is a decent unit. What I want to give props though is its other support, the grade 1 Brilliant Blister, but we are judging based on grade 3, so I'm not putting him in, but I just want to shout out this card. Next up is Ramiel Reverse. Okay, I'm gonna need to look through Ramiel this one just to be sure.
One eternity later.
Okay, so Ramiel is actually a very in my opinion, is a very awkward unit to actually run, in a sense that it punishes the players for playing Celestial. Like, sorry, if you don't play Celestial game properly, it punishes you even if you counter charge. So overall, I do think this is okay. This will definitely anger a lot of people. This is really the one that will anger a lot of people. But to me, it's here.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
Okay, here's a reason. The fact that you need a card that with a specific name. I know it's a Celestial thing, but the fact that you need to do that is actually pretty bad. Like, Celestial effect is the mechanic is fine, having the same name thing on the damage zone. The problem behind that is that when you are going to punish yourself for not doing the way the deck has built it for, it's a little bit too far. Even though it has a very good Vanguard ability to actually force the opponent to guard based on number of the card in your damage zone overall, it's actually pretty busted, even if it can be mitigated by a Counterblast too. But as you all know by now, Counterblast has been a really crucial resource for many of the decks. So against many of the decks in the current meta, especially with the Weakland collection, you definitely see deck that will have trouble paying up the cost. But overall, I think this is still a very hard to pilot card. Okay, next up is Esso's Cross Scissors, and I think this is good unit. Yeah, I'll put here. Esso definitely is a good unit. I mean, like, the deck already focused on superior engine, so you definitely can hit this Esso Scissor Cross by turn 3 or turn 4 based on your hand. And once you hit the Esso Scissor Cross, everything in your life, it just became better. Especially with the fact that it gains every single thing from the original with the other Excel from your drop zone. So overall, this is a really good card, and if you up against Link Joker, it has unlocked, so that's a good benefit to add on. I just say it has already a good base. It's just getting better thanks to Cross Scissors.
No. He's got a point.
Okay, next up is Magazu Gale Reverse. I think this is one of those decks that need future support. The first of the reverse. For one reason, there's currently only total of 4 Magazu units with different names. So overall, these 4 units is needed to prevent the lock condition of this deck. And I think it's not the hardest to achieve, it's just that not all the Magazu units are good right now, like compared to the current meta. So I think you need this deck kind of need a more Magazu in-name unit to actually pull off a more impressive combo. I think its lock effect is actually pretty cool, like ability to drive check. It's just that the current meta just doesn't really like to play Magazu deck, other rear unit in general as well, the Great One in particular. But yeah. Okay, next up is Raptor. Raptor Colonel, sorry. This is actually, in my opinion, a very strong unit. And here's the reason why. Yes, Military Dragon is a specific type that only have 3 members, but fortunately, Colonel don't need that. And if you play Equip Gauge as what it is today, together with a really good support that Equip Gauge has, this is actually can be very strong because it restuns itself. And if you retire all the unit that has Equip Gauge on it, that you know, the one that can respawn the unit on the gauge, it means that you can generate into more attacks, and that is actually pretty strong. Okay, Ethic Buster Reverse. This is gonna be one of those main unit here as well. Okay, I have experience playing against this deck, and from the player who do play this deck, this is what he said. You still need original Ethic Buster to really get the enough rush that you do really need. But I think overall this is definitely a cool unit to play. It's just that like the deck kind of rely on the original playstyle of the Ethic Buster, which has always been attacked during the main phase. It rely on that a little bit too much to actually be useful in this deck. So overall, it's an okay card. Next up is Nebula Lord Dragon, and this, in my opinion, is, yeah, it's gonna be in the mid tier. Overall, I think Nebula Dragon compared to other Star Vader unit like Infinite Zero and Chaos Breaker, this is one of the weakest boss unit member, in the sense that you need lock unit to actually gain benefit, while Chaos Breaker actually play with the lock, and Infinite Zero kind of restrict the opponent outright with the lock. And this one, the fact that this one kind of rely on it, it can be a little bit slow, especially this is essentially a turn 4 deck, a turn 4 card. And as we all know, a lot of V deck already can rush to the hell of you in turn 3 already. Many of them are already in the top tier. So overall, this is definitely not a good boost to a Star Vader archetype. The red card is okay though. Next up is Amon. This definitely had my bias on it, but it definitely needs more support. But I think with what it has, it is already compatible enough with the pre-existent DI support, and that alone will go here. Hear me out. What makes Maelstrom Reverse strong? Ability to force opponent to discard. Amon has that, but on a much more consistent term. This has ability to essentially force the opponent to put their card from hand, field, and drop zone into the store. Free of the pace, in my opinion, that is actually very crucial. So overall, Amon is actually a pretty strong deck. Like, it gains benefit from opponent losing those benefit, and one more important thing that a lot of people don't realize is that Amon is very cost free.
NANI?!
If you get damage denied with this deck, you don't need to worry, because the deck can start its engine on its own without actually worry about anything. And that alone is something I'm willing to put my bet on. DI will go meta just because of the fact that you don't need to heavily rely on counterblast as much as they used to be in the past. Next up, Elio. This is hard to decide because I think Elio is a good unit, and Steam Maiden is a very good side engine for many of the Gear Chronicle deck. But I think, okay, you know what? I think this is a good deck. I'll put it below here. A little bit better than Wish because multi-attack. I think Elio in general is a very fun deck to play, and the deck that I think Steam Maiden kind of deserve. Like, Steam Maiden has a rep for being a very good engine for the past few years, even back in G era. So I think the fact that they decided to give recognition to the archetype is actually really good. The only issue I think is that the deck doesn't have enough Steam Maiden to really make the deck make out. Like, the good Steam Maiden that mix play well with Elio to actually play the deck. But okay, again, this is just my opinion. I'm not sure it's gonna be good enough or not. If you played Steam Maiden, do leave the comments below. Mr. Timely Vanguard Insider, if you happen to see this video, do leave in the comments what do you guys think. What do you think of Elio? Like, I'm really curious as someone I know who play Gear Chronicle and love Gear Chronicle. So yeah. Next up is Cocytus. Cocytus, I think it's solid. I'm gonna put it here. Cocytus is one solid unit in the sense that even though it lock card, it doesn't really affect anything, because once you play the effect, you play out the effect, it just go back to its normal state. So like the lock don't really affect the board heavily in any way. And I think with the fact that its effect is very simple, it's actually pretty decent. It's just that the original Cocytus hasn't been a good unit to begin with.
Why you boring me? I'm right.
So it can be a little bit iffy. Like, I think Cocytus is a little bit slow on the meta already, but we don't know. 4 attacks, even though 2 of them is a Vanguard, actually can be very strong. So we need to see how it will happen later on. Next up is Negrobo, and I think this is one of those decks that needs support as well. In a sense that this is a very brand new way of playing Grand Blue, and I do think just one Ghoul Dragon is not enough. It need a few 1-2 more cards to actually make the deck playable. And once it's playable, I think it can be one of the more fun deck because of its ability to play very defensively while going offensive on a relatively okay note. So yeah, this is by far the most protect deck I have seen in a while. Okay, next up Polaris. Fuck off. This one, no. Okay, the problem with Polaris in my opinion is that you need to hit 50k and 70k to actually trigger the effect. You know, the DP level of power. And I'm not sure if Great Nature is capable of doing that in V Premium. And I think that is alone is something that I'm not too sure about. If there's a deck that can do that, do leave in the comments below, as I'm really curious how you actually pull off this card effect. Okay, next is Locks. Okay, this is one of those I think I'm gonna need to check. So, kill the...
One eternity later.
I see. Okay, so Locks essentially is an extender for Polaris. So you just go there and stay defeated. Here's the problem. This card has the ability to give all grade 3s 5k, but it's only give once because of once per turn ability, and it needs to be a Vanguard, so it doesn't really work well with Polaris. So how are you going to hit 50k with just this? That's all I'm gonna say. Because it's going to be a Vanguard unit, I don't see any capability for this deck to be able to hit like these 2 cards together, to be able to hit the power level consistently. And yeah, if you guys know what to do about it, leave in the comments below. Like seriously, I don't know how this is gonna be possible. Okay, next is this last 2 clan, total of 3 units. Cecilia Reverse is okay, and yeah, it's here. Okay, the reason that it's here is because of how good Musketeer already is to begin with, but this one requires you to play in a very specific way, and if you are able to, this deck can be a really good skill. Because of the fact that the deck already can like in mid-battle superior call, so ability to generate into more regards is actually pretty strong. It's hard to play though because of the fact that you do need Cecilia Vanguard to actually pull off this effect. So I can't really say anything about this unless the Musketeer player say it's bad by itself. But I think overall it is a good boost to a force deck that has always been very aggressive to begin with because of the additional attack. Next up with Vistaria, and this is one of those good units also. I'll leave it at the bottom. So here for the reason. This card works regardless of the position that it is in, as a Vanguard or the Vanguard. And any deck that can use plant token will definitely get benefit from Vistaria. And that in general I think is good already. Like plant token deck has already been considered strong for Neo Nectar. This just make it just make the token deck a little bit more playable in the current meta, which is fine, and I think it's a good card. And last but not least, Raging for Dragon. Initially, in my previous recording that I worked on this, I decided it to be the last because I didn't read the skill properly. But after I have read it, it is by far the most disgusting reverse unit. Actually, not the most disgusting, but like it's definitely high up there in the meta tier for one reason: 4 Vanguard attacks.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
Yes, of course, 2 of them is not exactly the same Vanguard since you going into a raging form, but that alone is actually make this deck very, very busted. Its potential to go 3 Vanguard attacks is really, really strong, and its lock effect is not as though it's a must lock. It's a lock to actually activate raging 4 effect. So overall, it's in a sense that it's allowed the player to go into raging 4 in mid of the battle phase, as it has ability to do lock 2 regards on its separate from its Vanguard effect that give the front row 5k. And I think overall, after considering for a while, this is one of the strongest unit I have seen. It's one of the Maelstrom reverse of kind of power level, as it hurts the deck, it hurts the field, but it hurts in the best way possible. And that's why I decided to put Raging 4 into one of the top tier of the deck. And yeah, that's all I have for the list, and I think overall we got a relatively good representation here. Oh wait, sorry, not a good representation here, but I think overall there are some good boss unit that may or may not be in the meta in the short future for the next 6 months. There are good decks that can kind of compete with these high tier decks. So once again, if you guys think that some of these units are placed wrongly, leave in the comments below. And like I said before, I'm not the best at the V format. Like I'll be honest here, V is by far not my favorite format of Vanguard, and I have enough complaint about the format to be put into another video, so look out for that soon. And that's all I have for today, guys. Take care of yourself, and this is Mac Megane signing out.